tell you a brief history of how I got started and why I'm selling cornbread now in the grocery stores, and the history of how I got there. And at the end, if y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But I'm going to start. This is where I'm at today. These are my two products that are I'm in over 400 Walmarts in 11 states. I'm in Mitchell Food Warehouse, which is in Albertville, and Piggly Wiggly Warehouse, which is in Bessemer, Alabama. I'm in Earth Fair, which there's not a lot of those stores. We don't have one here in Florence, but they're a real nice high-end grocery store if y'all haven't been there. But my journey to get here started really about 10 years ago. I was a dental hygienist by trade. I worked for Robert Kuntz for 20 years. A lot of y'all probably know him. 2 days a week. I have 2 sons, and I was raising my boys, and they hit teenage years, and I was like, whoa, I need some more money. But I didn't want to go to work more days cleaning teeth because it tied me down. I liked being able to do things with them at school. So I've always been a baker, and I baked breads. So Sherry Campbell, who was at the Culinary Center at the time, started Spring Park Market. A lot of y'all may remember Spring Park Market. And so I started going there on Thursday nights selling my loaves of bread, cinnamon rolls. And I'll never forget the first night I drove down to the market. I was going to sell vegetables, and I just didn't have a lot at the first of the season. So I drove down with 16 loaves of bread. And everybody was doing Atkins diet, and I thought, I'm never going to sell these loaves of bread down here. Well, I literally didn't get them on the table till they were gone. And I was like, whoa, this is good. So the next week, I baked 36 loaves of bread. I went back down there. They were waiting when I got there, you know. So the next week, I baked like 64, 100. It just kept going up. So I said, forget the vegetables. I'm just going to sell bread because I thought people love homemade, you know, bread. And it was fresh, hot, you know, out of the oven when I drove down there. And that market was so successful. I had several years that I was selling 300 to 400 items a night down there. It was just a great thing. And so it was really helping me, gave me a little extra money. But my mother was always famous for her jalapeno cornbread. So I started making muffins and selling them there, partly because the 360 grill, the chef came down and did a cooking demo one night. And he came up to me and he said, could you make dinner rolls and some cornbread for my restaurant? You know, I was like, yeah, because, you know, the 360 is such a nice place, you know. So I said, I can make cornbread muffins and sell them to you frozen, and then you can get out what you need at a time. And he said, that'll be great. Well, so I would say he'd order 300. Well, I couldn't make exactly that many, so whatever I had left, I took down to the market. Well, they sold great because they went with the fresh vegetables and things like that. And my mom we'd always made it in 9x13 and taken it to church dinners, and everybody loved it. But as we all grew up and got out of the house, my mom had started making it into muffins and freezing them because then she could get out 1 or 2 at a time and heat them up. And you didn't have to have that whole pan of cornbread left or to deal with. So from that, I went in one day to Larry Willis's office in Sheffield, who is kind of the manager of all the food lands here. And I took him a pan of cornbread, and I just said, I make this, would you be interested in selling it in your freezer sections at your stores? And I said, it's going to have to sell frozen because it has no preservatives. And, you know, if you let it sit out for a couple days, it's going to mold. And I said, it just stays fresher and it's better, you know. Well, I took it down on a Friday, I'll never forget, and he was real busy, and I just kind of left it. And he called me on Tuesday, and he said, Laura, what can we do to get this cornbread in my grocery stores? And I was like, I'll never forget, I was actually at work at Dr. Kuntz's office when I got the call, and I was just like jumping up and down, you know, screaming. And so I went from that into, I had to get a barcode, I had to get packaging, because I had just been selling it in little clear containers at the market. So my first packaging was like this, and it was in the aluminum pans, and I just had a bag, a clear freezer-safe bag, and I had labels printed at Mitchell Printing, and I would sit there and put, you know, stickers on bags. And I did that for quite a while, and finally, my family helped me for a while, and finally my boys were like, Mama, you're going to have to just go get these labels printed on the bags, because we were doing thousands, you know, at a time. And so they all quit helping me, so I broke down and had to go. I didn't want to pay. I liked that I could go to Mitchell and just pay for a few and do what I needed, you know, but when I ordered the first order, I had to order like 25,000 bags. But anyway, this past year, I said, I'm going to go big or go home. I've been in Mitchell Warehouse. I actually got in there in December of 2009. That was when I first delivered my first cornbread to Food Lands. And from there, I went into their distribution centers in about 10 or 11. The years are flying by now. But last year, I'd kind of been floating along. I said, I'm just going to go big or go home. I've had it, you know. So I pursued Walmart. And everybody said, why did you go to Walmart? And I said, well, you got to fish where the fish are. I shop at Walmart, and I saw all these people in there that I thought, I'm missing all these sales. So fortunately, I got an appointment with the buyer in Bentonville, and I went out there and met with them. It was a guy, and he liked it well enough, and he said, I'll let you start delivering to 17 of your local Walmarts. So I said, okay, that's great. So I have a van, it's an old white van, and my husband put my chest freezer in the back of the van, and I literally drove around to all these Walmarts, and I would dig out of the freezer and get cases and take in there to them. But the sales were good enough that this past April, they picked me up and put me in 400 stores. So I started with the 17 and went to the 400, which I'm in 4 distribution centers now, so I don't physically deliver to 400 stores. They come and pick it up here at Bob Blank. But one beauty of all this, where I started, is, like Guile said, at the Culinary Center, and it's such a great place for a food business because I didn't have to go and build a kitchen and all that overhead. I've been able to stay there, and now we produce about 3,000 pans in a day, and I employ 12 to 15 people on a given day. But this packaging, Walmart, when I went into the distribution centers, they requested this packaging, which I needed to upgrade. It was time, and it just looks so much better in the stores. They said when it goes into their distribution center and their people are actually handling it and stocking it, that they were just afraid the bag and the aluminum pan wouldn't hold up. So we went into this in April of this year. So anyway, that's where I'm at. And I'm sorry, I talk fast, I'm hyper. Guys all the time saying how hyper I am. So anyway, any questions that I probably didn't cover that y'all have? Oh, well, okay, yeah. Well, okay, I went back, since I've been in Walmart now, I'm on my 3rd buyer. That's the problem with Walmart, is you change. Well, I had a guy the first time. I had a girl named Katie the second time. Katie was awesome. She's really who I attribute for getting me in these stores. This last buyer, I've had a really hard time with getting appointments with. She's just hard. I think she's overwhelmed, but I finally got an appointment with her. But while I was there, I asked to have a meeting with Sam's Club's frozen bread buyer also, and they granted me that. So when I was in Bentonville about 3 weeks ago, I met with the Sam's Club buyer, and she liked the product, but she said she only had 3 spots for bread. She had biscuits, Sister Schubert dinner rolls, and garlic bread. And she said, I'd have to get rid of one of those. And I was like, oh, no, you can't, because those are big sellers. I said, but cornbread would just round out the whole bread section. She said, well, I'll tell you what. She said, we don't put anything in Sam's without doing a taste panel. And she said, you need to come back and do that. So I just this Sunday drove out to Bentonville with 2 big ice chests of cornbread and did a taste test on Monday morning there, and it was really cool. Sam's is so organized. They had this room with these little windows, like 6 windows on each side, and we didn't get to see the taste testers. They came around from the outside, and they would sit down, and they would spin these stainless steel barrel-like things, and we'd put the cornbread in there, and then they'd spin it back around, and then they had questions on a computer that they had to answer about it. There was 4 products they were testing. They do 4 every morning and 4 every afternoon at Sam's. They have volunteers that come in and do the taste testing. I said it'd be a great job if you lived in Bentonville to go do that. But they got my cornbread was the first thing they tasted that day, so I was kind of happy about that. I always feel like the first thing that you eat, is what you'll remember and the taste. And they had a series of questions, but I couldn't say my business name. I had to, you had to be real careful there. They don't want any branding or anything on it. They just want it to be a real strict taste test. I just pray there weren't a lot of people from the north that don't eat cornbread in there that day. But anyway, I'm supposed to hear from my buyer about how that went and see, and then hopefully I imagine Sam's will start me out like Walmart. They'll want me to deliver to some local Sam's warehouses here, just stores. Like I can deliver to my store, probably Huntsville, Birmingham, and Nashville, something like that, and then they'll kind of go from there. But with Sam's, what I'm going to do is make a deeper box and put like 4 pans inside of it, 4 or 5 pans inside of it. I'll open this and show you how it comes inside. We still use the aluminum pan, but it now comes in just a plain freezer bag that we seal. I have, too, at the Culinary Center, my own machine that deposits the exact amount in the muffins, and then I have a packager that we feed the pan into, and it drops down and heat seals it closed and then comes out on the other side like that. So I do have 2 pieces of equipment I've bought, but when we started, we literally stood there and hand-dipped all these muffins. But we can really put out a lot of cornbread now with the machinery. And then also, I don't know if y'all have ever toured the kitchen, but they have 2 huge Hobart walk-in ovens that hold 2 of the big hanging racks. So I can cook a lot of cornbread in a day there.
And that's where you
Yes.
make all your cornbread.
Yes. Down here, it's
Great
on.
storage.
Thank
Wow.
you. It's on College Street in the old Burl Slater School. And what I was hoping would happen with getting in the 400 Walmarts has started to happen. Some grocery store chains have seen me in Walmart, and I had a broker contact me last week from North Carolina, and his store that he represents, Ingles, y'all might have heard of Ingles before, said they wanted it. They said, we found this cornbread and we want it in our stores. They have 205 stores in North Carolina. So, and then from that, I'm talking to Food City, which is also up in that area, J.W. Flowers, which I'm not familiar with them, and then they also rep Harris Teeter and Bilo, which is Winn-Dixie now too. So,
What about Bashas'?
I'm not familiar with that one.
Will you go on the West Coast? Are you limited, or you'll go everywhere?
I'm not limited except to where my cornbread would sell, which when I went to the college, a UNA business meeting last week, and who was telling me this? Maybe Greg Carnes had been in Chicago and went to a really 5-star upscale restaurant, and on the menu was a plate of pork chop, whatever, with a piece of jalapeno cornbread. So I was like, well, if it's in Chicago, you never know, how far it might go like that. Well, I actually am in the process of getting this on my website where people can order it online and we can ship to them, because I met some people that were like from Maine and they were like, oh man, we would love that, so you just never know, I think it would go pretty far, but it's just really doing well in the South. And since I've been in Kentucky and Tennessee and North Carolina, it's selling well. But what I was telling